welcome to Speakers Bank podcast. My name is Catherine and I have here with me Storm, Nathan,
Hello, everyone.
and Zekes.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
We are going to be talking about dementia.
Absolutely.
So, what do we know about dementia in the terms of like people with disabilities or people that are elderly that
Well, dementia is a very, very horrible disease. It's a disease that can affect anybody at any time.
Mm-hmm.
And it has the ability to make people go backwards to the point where they are not themselves, depending on the severity of what dementia you have. So it's a very, very serious problem that we all face. And if we don't do certain steps in our lives, we can end up with the condition. So it's a very, very important topic to talk about today.
Yeah, I know the experience as I got my nan. She's just moved into a nursing home. She's got really bad dementia at the moment. She's gone way back from when she was younger, when she was in the war. So that's quite daunting.
So speaking of that experience, Catherine, what are some of the biggest effects of dementia that you've noticed with your nan?
She forgets a lot. Like she still knows that, her memory is pretty much gone. She's really gone back to like she says things like what she was gone back to her childhood.
So when you say something like that, is her long-term memory gone or is it just a short-term memory?
Well, being in a nursing home, she thinks it's her home and she takes control. But right. So it's quite serious. Yeah, it's quite bad.
How about yourself, Nathan? Have you had any experience with dementia?
Yeah, it's actually really funny you should ask that, Storm. My wife's nana has had to be moved into what they call respite, which is the stage just before you get fully admitted into a nursing home. And it's really, really interesting to see the progression, because you can really tell the difference between, normal aging memory and dementia, because it's literally, they'll have very erratic, I would say, emotions. So for example, one day she might really be loving, the nursing home and not want to go back home and say, this is the right thing for me to do. And then a couple of weeks later, it might be, I want to go, back home and live on my own. Or it might be, she might say to her mother, or my mother-in-law, for example, I want to come and, stay with you. And they'll have to remind her, you can't, you've just got to, make the best of your situation now. And it's almost like just reverting back to childhood, really.
Zeki, you've had a personal experience with dementia. What are some of the biggest effects from your point of view?
Well, I think dementia itself is a very scarce topic and a very scarce thing to face. So you'll generally notice that within that progression that, you won't witness the same behaviors and the same changes. And there'll be very slight changes in behavior that you think, oh, maybe she's just forgetting. Oh, maybe she's just doing odd things because of old age. But then the tendency will generally kind of increase. And there'll be behaviors such as, I don't know, getting bread, for instance, and putting it in a shoebox, or, and you'll think it's funny, but you'll be like, oh, that's a bit odd. or there'll be an
Yeah.
instance of getting toilet paper and throwing that into the sink for no particular reason. But that's the thing, these behaviors generally outline a much more intense issue. And my suggestion to anyone who does weird behaviors or odd behaviors is just definitely get your loved ones tested for dementia. Definitely keep
Yeah.
on top of it, and definitely make sure that you allow them to have that safe space as well, because you don't want to.
So with that in mind, with getting tested and stuff, what do you guys think are the biggest challenges that people with dementia face? Is it in the community? Is it in the lifestyle? What exactly is it?
I think personally, based on what I've seen, and even having had, my dad's sister who's had dementia, it can be very much a lifestyle issue where they just want what they remember as being normal. They want the life that they've always had, and it's really heartbreaking when they can't understand why they have to be stuck in a nursing home, why they can't just go down to the shops whenever they want, why they can't pay their own bills. And it's very shocking because people with disabilities struggle enough with independence as it is, but then it gets to the stage where you get to the point where you have to try to explain to someone why they can't be as independent as they want to be.
Yeah. Like, I know, I understand, and I accept the fact.
Sorry guys, hang on 1 second. I just realized we lost Storm.
I just wanted to ask the group that what is the most common thing that people with dementia actually face? Is it in the community? Is it the way that the condition deteriorates over time? What is it?
It can be in the community as well. Like,
I think
yeah, it can be in the community because I know I was on the bus one time and there was this, I don't know, elderly man. He didn't know where to get off and he looked really distressed. So, yeah, I helped him a little bit, and there was these lovely high school students that make sure he got off at the right stop, which was very lovely of them. But yeah, yeah.
So what we're really
confused.
saying is that there's a lack of understanding because it's not really like a valid concept in society that people might be going through memory problems. So,
yeah, I think in my experience, having been around now, 2 people that have had dementia, one of them being one of my aunties. It's very much a lifestyle thing. So it seems to be like they don't understand why they can't do the things they used to do. When they're in the nursing home, they just want to go back home.
Yeah.
But then they don't, at the same time, they don't really know where home is. And as much as, even when you have in-home supports, a lot of older people can tend to be, and I know this isn't the case for everyone, but some old people, at least in my experience, can be very stubborn to say, well, I don't even want in-home help. I can do this myself.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's part of the problem. I think accepting the condition and then understanding why you've got the condition, I think that's what makes people confused, because in their minds, they probably think that they're okay and then they're just going through a phase. But they just don't understand that it's more than just, a lapse or two. It's more than just, forgetting the bread on the table. It's like the extreme forgetfulness. It's like putting your keys in the fridge or putting something that you don't normally put in place and forgetting where you've actually put it and having to double check everything. So I think that's part of the issue. I also think it's the way the community society actually talk to people with the condition. So they don't really talk to them in a respectful kind way. They think that they're being silly and they're not really listening to them, when in fact they are, but they just don't quite understand what's going on because of the conditions taking over their brain. So you need to be able to go down to the actual level and actually respect their condition and actually understand that it is what it is, and you need to respect that person for who they are and what they're going through.
And I think it's one of those, very, few diseases that we have where it may not be, curable or treatable in necessarily a medical sense, as far as I know officially yet. But at the very least, there are, things you can do to prevent it, like, reading, doing crosswords, keep your brain active. Because I think what a lot of people don't seem to realize is a lot of our, public health system seems to focus on, the physical aspect of, keeping well, keeping fit. But that's all well and good. But you also have to exercise, your brain, because your cognition is just as much a muscle as anything else in your body.
Absolutely.
At least in the theoretical sense. Like, I'm not, I don't want an angry doctor in the comments saying, you said the brain was a muscle. But no, I just mean like muscle memory. Like, it should be, considered to be a muscle, because, it might be the only faculty you have if you lose your physical ability.
And there was also one thing I wanted to mention to the group, and I think it's a very, very important topic that we can relate to with this condition, is that we kind of had like a little bit of a snapshot at what it could be like if we don't actually train our brains due to the COVID pandemic that's been going on.
Yeah.
And that's what you pointed out, Nathan, that we need to keep our brains sharp and clear, and making sure that we don't go backwards to the point where we just stay still. So
because I think, Storm, and I'm guilty of this as well, to be honest, I think what a lot of people do is they get into a habit of going, oh, I'll just switch on, the TV and pass the time, or maybe, like even, or watch, whatever. But I think aside from just, watching a documentary or something stimulating, I think what people are starting to realize that they forgot pre-COVID, or at least at the start, is that you've got to do something that actually stimulates your brain. You need to, like, do a puzzle, or, I guess even play a video game rather than passively just stare at something. You need to be able to engage with something.
Yeah, and there's other things too that can be very helpful. You need to have a balanced diet, fruit and veg, meat,
Yes.
and all that sort of stuff. Plenty of water. So keep that in mind too.
Yeah.
Keep the communication lines open between support, family and friends, all that sort of stuff. That's another good way of preventing memory loss. So the best thing to do is to keep active. That's the main part of the story.
Yeah.
The other issue I wanted to raise is what are some of the illnesses that are directly related to dementia? I can think of one, and it's very, very common. It's Alzheimer's, because it's a more severe form of dementia. And what happens is, for people who don't know, is that there is a certain part of the brain called a hippocampus.
Is that the hippocampus?
Hippocampus, sorry. And that actually affects the short-term memory part of your brain.
Yeah.
And from that part, that's where the Alzheimer's will eventually, unfortunately, spread.
Yeah.
So that is a very, very bad thing, because what happens is it will spread to other areas of the body, causing problems with mobility, swallowing, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very horrible thing. What also happens is that some of the neurons in your brain, because the Alzheimer's kills all your brain cells, they can't connect to each other, which means they can't communicate, and that makes your memory even worse, because you don't know what you're doing and you can't make proper decisions because the brain's just too much. The neurons in your brain are just completely broken apart. So it's a very, very bad thing. So speaking of that, I wanted to let people know that there is drugs available that can help try to get the connective stuff back that you've sort of lost, but it doesn't stop the condition. So it is a very important thing to be on top of that.
And I was just researching too, as we're on the podcast, is that even when you get diagnosed with one of these diseases, I think that while you can't, as a doctor or treating physician, sugarcoat it, I think we need to be careful as well with the way that we present it. Like, for example, before Robin Williams sadly passed away in 2014, he was told by doctors that he had Parkinson's disease. And it was only after he died that they found out, well, he actually had Lewy body dementia, which as far as we've discussed with, the most common types of dementia can be, at least prevented, and as far as I know, slowed at least with mental, stimulation. But he was essentially told before he died, you have Parkinson's, life basically over, at least as far as I know. And then that led to, depression because he didn't know what was going on. And obviously you have very erratic emotions. So I think it's very important to emphasize to a person, well, just because you have an illness that may well be terminal doesn't mean that life's over. And you probably actually, more than any other time in your life, need to maintain a sense of humor.
Absolutely.
I know
there's also another condition called the vascular condition, and that's when people have tiny strokes, or people with high blood pressure, or people who smoke on a regular basis. So that's another one to keep going for. And I'm pretty sure down the track there'll be other forms of Alzheimer's that we're yet to discover.
Or if you drink a lot.
Yeah, well, you drink a lot too. So that's another
so I know
one.
there's a bit to do when people drink so much alcohol. Can't remember what it's called, but it does.
I think it's like an alcohol-induced dementia.
Yeah.
Where eventually you damage so many of your cells that you can't regenerate.
Now, I was doing some research, and unfortunately, dementia can be a generic disease, but it's a very rare thing. So you can get it if you have family history, but it's a really rare thing. So as long as you keep on top of your, like what we said, exercise, keeping on track with friends and family, having a balanced diet, you should be okay.
Yeah. And I think, Storm, that's one of the things, especially our, older not just people with disabilities, but even those, the elderly in the community really struggled with, because it was getting to the point in the pandemic where at least supermarkets in the area that I was living previously on the Gold Coast when the pandemic started, they had to have an early hour just for the seniors and the disabled, because everyone was taking like all the fresh fruit and vegetables. So you'd get to like the supermarket and all you'd find, for example, you might see a stack of like 3 or 4 steaks, but they'd be the most expensive. Or you'd have vegan food and there'd be no like fresh fruit and veg left. There'd be nothing nutritious. It would all just be, confectionery and biscuits and baked goods.
Right. The other question I wanted to ask too is, how do you think people should support people who've got dementia? Because you briefly touched on that. What are some of the strategies that you guys have been through that have been able to support people with this horrible condition?
Be patient with them.
I think it's not just a matter of, as Catherine pointed out very, very rightly, I think patience is definitely a key, but I think also you not only need to be patient, as Storm mentioned earlier, you need to really listen to what they want, and treat them like they can still make some sort of a decision, because, despite, they may well, decline mentally, but the reality is, you know, we in the disabled community as well even know what it's like to be talked down to and demeaned.
Absolutely.
And so I don't think that we should do the same. And I also think, you know, even if you have some sort of, you know, terminal illness that you know would take your life, and I know it's very easy for someone like me who's, you know, relatively healthy to say that, but I think it's one of those things where if you get one of those diagnoses that's terminal, I think the best thing to do is, you know, at least maintain a sense of humor, because I think if you have nothing else and you can see the funny side to, you know, dementia or Alzheimer's, you know, laughter really can, you know, and even joy can be, you know, some of the best medicine. I know that there are dementia and Alzheimer's organizations that have actually put joke books together that were actually written by those people that are all jokes related to having Alzheimer's and dementia and forgetting.
Yes, it's very, very important to have a good sense of humor in anything we do in life, isn't it? So
Yeah.
that's a wonderful tip. I think what we really want to say is that we want to continue our support with people who've got dementia and just make them realize that they are still people and they are still human beings with thoughts, feelings, and emotions.
Yeah.
So we've got to keep that in mind.
And I would say, well, there's nothing that, you know, as far as I know, that would fully prevent you from getting the disease. There are, you know, some methods that you can do to, you know, at least reduce your chances of getting it. So, you know, you've got to keep your brain active. You've got to, you know, get off Audible and actually pick up, you know, a paper book. Like if you're from my generation, you know, go to an op shop and actually open a paper book, and remember that we once cut down a tree, made paper and formed it into a book instead of, you know, using a digital book or using Audible, because, you know, apparently this generation's too lazy to read with their eyes. You know, and I'm just saying that because a lot of our generations, they get hooked on podcasts, Audible, and no one remembers what it's like to go, oh, here's a physical paper book that might actually help me. You know,
mind you, just make sure everyone listens to this podcast though. This podcast is special. So don't forget about this podcast. Keep listening to this podcast.
Yeah, it's basically like listen to this one and then actually go read a book.
That's exactly right. That's the perfect example. So yeah, for everyone out there, don't stop listening to this podcast. We want to continue the views, continue the conversations. So keep tuning in, everyone. So that pretty much will wrap it up for this podcast. I'd like to thank everyone, Nathan, Catherine. Does Zeki have any final thoughts? Or
well, it's funny because I was going to input a lot of good stuff, but you guys have already covered pretty much everything I wanted to input. And my biggest takeaway from this is, when it comes to the safety of yourself, your loved ones, and everyone around you, make sure you take precaution. Make sure you're aware of what's happening around you. Make sure that you definitely research into the effects of dementia, Alzheimer's, even if you think it's a short-term memory loss. Just make sure you keep on it, you know, and keep everyone consistently up to date around you, family members, everything you can. So,
and definitely take steps to keep your mental health in check and your brain strong. Because if you don't use it, you'll lose it.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And
keep being you. Just because you've been diagnosed with it doesn't mean you can stop being yourself.
Absolutely.
Because you shouldn't change for anyone. Always be yourself, and always keep having that funny side of life.
Yeah, life's not over. It's just another chapter.
Yeah. Well, with that, we're going to sign off for today's podcast. If you'd like to see more of our podcast, please like and subscribe. We'd love to hear from you, and we can't wait to see you. Bye.